It begins quietly, not with an explosion, not with a siren, not with the world screaming. It begins with a single line of encrypted data traveling through the dark, a message, a launch order. Somewhere deep underground, beneath reinforced concrete and steel, a red light turns on. Men who have trained their entire lives for this moment stop breathing because they know. Once the missiles leave the ground, nothing can bring them back. The world will never be the same again. It is 3:17 a.m. Most people are asleep. Cities are dark. Highways are empty. Phones are charging beside beds. Families dream peacefully, unaware that the next 30 minutes will decide whether civilization survives. In a command bunker, a general receives confirmation. Multiple launches detected. Not one missile, not two. Dozens, then hundreds. The screen fills with glowing trajectories, rising like spears into the atmosphere. For a moment, nobody speaks, because every person in that room understands what it means. This is not a warning. This is not a drill. This is nuclear war, and it has already started. The first minutes are not chaos. They are disbelief. A stunned silence in rooms where the unthinkable has just become real. Across the world, early warning satellites detect the heat blooms of rockets tearing upward through clouds. The system reacts instantly. Automated alarms trigger inside military networks. In the United States, NORAD flashes red. In Russia, underground command centers erupt into motion. In Europe, NATO headquarters receives a coded emergency transmission. Strategic launch confirmed. The Cold War nightmare is no longer history. It is now. The clock begins. In Washington, officials are woken violently. Phones ring in the darkness. Secure lines open. The president is rushed from sleep into the Emergency Operations Center. Still half awake, still human, still processing. He is told the words that have haunted every leader for 70 years. Missile launch detected. And then the follow-up. Estimated impact time, 25 minutes. 25 minutes. That is all that remains. Outside, the world continues as normal. A truck drives down an empty road. A hospital nurse checks a monitor. A student sleeps with headphones on. They have no idea that the warheads are already in the sky. At minute 3, the first public systems begin to react. In some regions, emergency broadcast networks activate. Television screens flicker. Radio stations cut out. A harsh tone interrupts the silence. This is not a test. The words feel unreal. People blink, confused. Some assume it's a hack. Some laugh. Some freeze. But in military bunkers, nobody is laughing, because they can see the truth. The missiles are real, and they are coming. At minute 5, fighter jets scramble. Submarines receive coded messages. Commanders open sealed envelopes that have waited decades for this moment. Inside those envelopes are targets, coordinates, orders written long before anyone believed they would ever be used. At minute 6, the retaliation debate becomes irrelevant. There is no time for politics, no time for diplomacy, only survival. The president is presented with a decision: launch now, or risk losing the ability to respond at all. This is the nightmare of nuclear doctrine, the use them or lose them moment. If the enemy's missiles hit first, command centers could be destroyed, silos could be wiped out, communication could vanish, and then retaliation becomes impossible. So the pressure is unbearable. In a room filled with blinking lights and men trembling behind discipline, the president asks the only question that matters. Are we sure? The answer is cold. Yes, sir. The missiles are confirmed. This is not an error. This is not a false alarm. This is the end of peace. At minute 8, the launch order is prepared. 2 officers stand over a safe. Keys are inserted. Codes are verified. Everything is procedural, mechanical. But beneath it is horror, because they are about to unleash something no human can control. At minute 10, deep beneath the ocean, a submarine captain hears the message. The words are simple: execute. He closes his eyes for a fraction of a second. Then he gives the command. Missile hatches open. Water rushes. A violent force builds. And then, from the darkness of the sea, a Trident missile erupts upward. A column of fire and steam breaks the surface. It climbs into the sky. 1 becomes 2. 2 becomes 10. 10 becomes dozens. Now, both sides are launching. Now there is no stopping it. At minute 12, panic reaches the public. Social media explodes with videos of emergency alerts. People begin calling loved ones, but networks overload instantly. Cell towers jam. Calls fail. Text messages freeze mid-send. In apartments across New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, people stare at their phones, whispering, "What's happening?" At minute 13, highways begin to fill. Cars flood the roads. Some try to flee cities. Some try to reach family. Some simply drive because staying still feels like death. But there is nowhere to go. You cannot outrun a nuclear warhead. At minute 15, the world realizes something terrifying. This is not just an attack. This is total collapse. Stock markets halt. Air traffic control loses coordination. Flights are ordered to land immediately. In the skies, pilots hear trembling voices. Possible incoming strike. Prepare for emergency. At minute 16, military bases seal. Missile defense systems activate. Radar dishes turn. Interceptors are armed. But deep down, everyone knows the truth. Missile defense cannot stop hundreds of warheads. It can only soften the blow. The fire is coming. At minute 18, the first sirens begin. In some cities, warning systems howl for the first time in generations. A sound most people have never heard outside of movies. Now it is real, and it means you have minutes left. People run. Some hide in basements. Some pray. Some scream at the sky. Parents grab children. Strangers embrace. The modern world, so confident, so loud, so unstoppable, becomes fragile in an instant. At minute 20, in Moscow, in Washington, in Brussels, leaders stare at countdown clocks. 20 minutes ago, the world was normal. Now, the species is facing extinction. The warheads are halfway there. And in the final 10 minutes, everything will change, because the first detonation is approaching. And once the first city burns, there is no return. Minute 21. The countdown is no longer theoretical. Somewhere above the Arctic, warheads separate from their boosters, silent and invisible, gliding through the upper atmosphere at speeds faster than sound. They are no longer missiles. They are falling stars of death. No radar can negotiate with them. No human voice can stop them. They are already committed. On the ground, the world is unraveling. In New York, sirens scream through the streets. In Warsaw, churches fill with people who haven't prayed in years. In Berlin, families huddle in subway tunnels. In Moscow, traffic jams stretch for miles as citizens flee toward nowhere. And in Washington, inside a hardened bunker, officials watch the digital clock bleed away the last moments of peace. 9 minutes to impact. A general speaks quietly, almost to himself. Once the first one hits, everything changes. Nobody answers because there is nothing to say. At minute 22, emergency broadcasts repeat the same impossible instruction. Seek immediate shelter, stay away from windows, remain indoors. People laugh hysterically. Shelter from what? From the sun falling out of the sky? From a weapon that turns cities into shadows? There is no real shelter for millions. Only delay. Only the illusion of safety. At minute 23, cell networks collapse completely. The phones become bricks. Social media stops refreshing. The digital world, the one people rely on more than oxygen, simply dies. For the first time in modern history, humanity is alone with its fear. No scrolling, no distractions, only the sound of sirens and the pounding of hearts. At minute 24, military command posts attempt one last act of control. Missile defense interceptors launch. Small streaks of light rise into the atmosphere, trying to meet incoming warheads. It is a desperate gesture, like throwing stones at a meteor. One interceptor finds its target. A flash blooms in the upper sky. One warhead destroyed. But there are hundreds more, and each one carries the power of a nation-ending fire. At minute 25, the world holds its breath. In classrooms, teachers whisper. In hospitals, doctors stop mid-sentence. In homes, families embrace for what might be the last time. A child asks, "Is it going to hurt?" A mother cannot answer. Somewhere, a man kneels beside his bed, shaking, repeating the same words over and over. "I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." At minute 26, the first warning reaches the final stage. Impact imminent. The phrase is clinical. It does not capture what it truly means. Impact means the end of a city. Impact means fire hotter than the surface of the sun. Impact means tens of thousands erased in a single second. At minute 27, pilots over the Atlantic receive their last transmission. Air traffic control is gone. Military channels are saturated. The sky is full of aircraft with nowhere to land, carrying passengers who have no idea they are witnessing the final hours of the old world. They do not hear it. They simply live their last moments unaware. A couple sleeps. A nurse walks down a hallway. A taxi driver glances at an empty street. Then, the horizon turns white. Not bright, not luminous. White. A flash beyond comprehension. For a fraction of a second, the city is lit like noon. Every window becomes a mirror. Every eye that sees it is burned. The flash arrives before the sound, before the shock wave, before the brain even understands. And then, the fireball blooms. A sun is born on Earth. At minute 29, the shock wave follows. It moves faster than any hurricane, faster than any storm, faster than any human scream. Buildings fold like paper. Glass becomes shrapnel. Entire neighborhoods are lifted and erased. People closest to the blast do not run. They do not feel pain. They simply stop existing. In the center, temperatures reach millions of degrees. Steel vaporizes. Concrete becomes dust. The city is no longer a city. It is an expanding sphere of fire. Miles away, those who survived the flash are thrown violently to the ground. Ears rupture. Lungs collapse. The sound arrives like the sky breaking. And then comes the silence. A silence so unnatural, it feels like the universe itself has stopped. But it hasn't. Because the war is not one strike. It is many. At minute 30, other flashes appear on the horizon. One, then another, then three more. Different cities, different continents, the same hell. The world is being dismantled in real time. In military bunkers, officers stare at maps that are turning into ash. Targets vanish. Communication dies. Command becomes meaningless. The war has escaped human hands. Now it is physics. Now it is fire. Now it is extinction mathematics. Outside the blast zones, people finally understand. This is not a crisis. This is not an emergency. This is the end of the world they knew. A man stands in the street, staring at the mushroom cloud rising like a god of death. He whispers, "Oh my God." Behind him, others are running, but he does not move. Because where do you run when the sky itself is burning? In the minutes after impact, a new reality begins. The air is thick with dust. The sun is blocked. Ash falls like snow. The first survivors cough blood, their skin already blistering from thermal burns. And far beyond the cities, governments prepare for what comes next. The second wave, the retaliation, the full exchange. Because the first 30 minutes were only the opening chapter. The missiles that hit were not the end. They were the beginning. And now, the planet enters the next phase, the collapse, the aftermath, the days when survivors will learn that death did not come all at once. It comes slowly, through radiation, through hunger, through the loss of everything. The narrator's voice lowers, almost a whisper. 30 minutes ago, the world was normal. Now, It is gone. And somewhere, in the darkness beyond the fire, the question hangs in the air. Was this ever meant to happen? Or was it an accident that nobody could stop? Because in nuclear war, once the first missile launches, the world realizes too late. It was already over.